Now, you might have seen over the last couple of days, Peter Dutton's son Harry has been with him on the campaign trail. He popped up yesterday, took questions from the media, spoke to the media about the fact that he wants to be able to buy a house for himself, but it's very expensive to do so. Here's a little reminder if you didn't see it yesterday.
I am saving up for a house, and so is my sister Beck and a lot of my mates, but as you've probably heard, it's almost impossible to get in the current state. So, I mean, we're saving like mad, but it doesn't look like we'll get there in the near future, but we'd love that to change.
And soon after, the lefty journalists and proponents of Albinomics were saying, well, why doesn't your father just pay for you to buy a house? As though lefties have now decided that it's a good thing to use intergenerational wealth to get into the property market. I thought they would have been on board with the idea of everyone being able to afford things for themselves without having to lean on the wealth of their parents to do it. But no, when it comes to Peter Dutton's son saying he'd like to be able to do it under his own steam, well, why aren't you doing it for him, Mr. Dutton? Now, I don't quite get the reasoning here, but Peter Dutton yesterday wouldn't actually answer the question. He waited until today to say, yes, he would help out his son.
Will you help them if they're saving for a deposit and proving to be good financially responsible kids? And
I think our households are no different to many households where we want our kids to work hard, to save, and we'll help them with the deposit at some stage. But
now, he could have just said that yesterday and put it all to bed. But as far as I'm concerned, it's a moronic line of questioning. Because what Dutton is trying to say here, and what his son Harry is trying to say, is that it shouldn't matter whether your parents have any money to decide whether you can get into the housing market. Surely we shouldn't be in a position where you have to rely on your parents or your grandparents in order to be able to get into the housing market. For a lot of people, that's not how it used to be, but it is now, for most people, the way it is. If you want to get into the market, you've either got to rely on mum and dad to dip into the bank now to help you to secure your loan or to give you some extra money for a deposit, or you have to wait for them to drop off the perch and inherit their home in order to own property. This is not a great situation, is it? Because, of course, if you believe in conservative politics, you need to understand that people have to own something. They need something to conserve if they're going to continue thinking that way. So Dutton's saying, look, we want people to be able to buy houses under their own steam, and for some reason or another, the left doesn't think that's a good thing. So it's interesting to see how this has played out. And of course, today, Harry was back out with Mr. Dutton on the campaign trail. He posted a photo on X this morning saying how happy and proud he was to have his son out on the hustings with him. Look, it may have blown up a little bit in his face yesterday. I wonder why it's taken this long to get the family out there. I know they were on the 60 Minutes interview that they did with Carl Stefanovic. But you know what? Harry seems like an intelligent, upstanding young fella who was trying to make a legitimate argument about how he wants to be able to buy a home on his own without having to rely on his dad to bankroll him. Why don't they get a bit more of this out there, the coalition? I mean, they could give anything a go at this point.
I agree. I think that Harry is a secret weapon that the Liberals should have rolled out from the very beginning of this campaign, because don't forget, Harry is 20 years old. He actually represents a cohort that the Liberals are desperately trying to target through these housing policies, through this first home buyers scheme that they have announced as well, because they need to win over that cohort, because we know that a lot of young voters, a lot of millennials, for example, a lot of Gen Z, they're actually turning to the minor parties, and that's where the Greens could potentially pick up a lot of seats from these younger voters. But, you know, Harry, I guess, represents as well Peter Dutton's family life. And Peter Dutton has been painted, as we know, as this hard man, this, you know, tough, strong politician. Well, when we see this softer side, people actually warm to him and warm to his family. And I know when Peter Credlin did that sit-down podcast interview, you remember, with Peter Dutton, he actually spoke a lot there about his family, and it's a side we didn't see. Whereas Albo, he's always trotting out lines about Jodie, when they're going to get married, and Toto the dog, for goodness sake.
Don't forget his mum who brought him up in housing.
And please, we can't forget about the social housing comment.
And don't forget his son who got Qantas Lounge access.
And we can't forget that.
family point as well.
Family point as well. But I just thought that the media question, though, about whether or not Peter Dutton would help his son out was absolutely appalling, because what parent, if they had the means to do so, wouldn't actually want to help out their children get into the market?